Hello everybody, welcome to AZ Security. My name is Dinan Paardenkoper. I'm a cloud security architect at IT Impressive. And for today, we're going to talk about Secure Global Access, GSA. And together with a special guest, Matthew, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Dinan. Thanks for having me. So I
Yes.
am Matthew Levy. I am a solutions architect and actually a Microsoft security MVP, and I specialize in identity and access with Microsoft Entra ID. I spend most of my time helping organizations secure and modernize their identity environments using zero trust principles.
Yes.
I'm I'm a big believer in practical security over like theory, and I like sharing real world things that I've learned from the field through my blogs and talks and community events. And so essentially, if it touches identity, access, or security, that's where I can basically talk for hours.
Awesome. I can't wait to start. But MVP, and how long are you MVP already?
7 years now.
Wow,
I need to
that's
check
quite a
the
long
number of
time.
rings. 1, 2, 3, 4,
Oh,
5,
they're the
7. Yeah,
rings. Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
7 rings.
Awesome. You already have the blue one as well, of course, after
For
5, eh?
5. Yeah, that's
Cool.
right. Yeah, and
Awesome. And
congratulations to you for being an MVP too. So,
yeah, thanks.
well done.
For me, it's my third year, so
Third year. Yeah.
looking forward to the next one if they are allowing me to, of course.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it's always a nervous time of year at this time because we have to.
It's going to start again, right? But hey, awesome
Yeah.
to that you had the time to talk about Entra Global Security Access.
hmm
Um, for the people at home that do not know this technology, can you explain what it is?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about Microsoft Global Secure Access, and that's it's basically just a name, and I'll get into that in a moment. But specifically, I'm going to talk about private access and how that works in a zero trust world. So for years, we've relied on legacy VPNs and kind of the network being a boundary and a trust boundary to get users access to private applications and resources within the corporate network. But that model doesn't really scale anymore, and it doesn't align with the modern security threats specifically. So private access flips that on its head by putting the identity at the forefront. So identity being the control plane, and I'm sure you've heard that before from Microsoft, but it
Absolutely.
allows us to use Entra ID, conditional access, and continuous access evaluation, CAE, to verify and control access to internal apps wherever they live, whether that's Azure, on-prem, AWS, any other private cloud.
Mhm.
So this is about moving away from network-based trust and towards identity-driven, least privileged access. So maybe just to explain where global secure access comes in and how Microsoft are marketing it, I'm going to share my screen and just show a couple of architecture slides. So here you can see this is what is global secure access, and global secure access is just a term really that's bringing together Microsoft's security service edge, SSE. Some other organizations refer to it as SASE, SASE, but essentially it's the service edge. It's the boundary, and that incorporates two things: Microsoft Entra Internet Access and Microsoft Entra Private Access. And you can see on the diagram on the right-hand side, it's allowing you to have those controls, those zero trust principles applied to identities, endpoints, and networks to verify explicitly, use least privilege, and assume breach when accessing on the left-hand side at the top internet resources, so Microsoft 365 or software as a service applications, and then private resources or private access things on the right-hand side, which are your on-premises data centers and cloud data centers or cloud networks, cloud resources even. This slide just illustrates how the SSE, or Secure Service Edge, is essentially creating tunnels, secure tunnels, to access those resources. And so you'll see in Global Secure Access, it's actually, we've got 3 tunnels. The Microsoft tunnel, that's tunneling all the traffic to the Microsoft services, so Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Teams, etc. And then we have the Internet Access tunnel, which is if you're accessing typical internet websites and software as a service, Salesforce, etc. That's potentially integrated with your identity provider, typically Microsoft Entra ID. And then the third tunnel is the private access, which is a secure tunnel to access those private resources. So today I'm going to talk specifically around the private access and how it can enable an identity-centric zero trust network architecture.
Cool. And one question in the slide back. If I have a VPN solution which does sort of split tunneling, striping off the traffic which is preferred to go to the internet straight away, that is also possible automatically?
Yes. So actually, one of the very strong use cases for private access is a VPN replacement. So a lot of organizations are looking to replace their existing VPNs with private access, and it still allows them to have that split tunneling. So, for users to access their Facebook, for lack of a better example, from their machine at home, they can still go via their typical route to the internet, but to access private resources, it would go over that tunnel.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So one of the problems with the traditional VPNs is it's a network access, and it grants you access to the entire network, and so that can be useful at times where you have access to all of the resources. But if an account is breached and is able to get onto the VPN, then they have access to all the resources within your corporate network. And so there's a risk of lateral movement within your network. Whereas with private access, because it's identity based, you can segment applications and grant access to specific resources on-prem or in a cloud, private access resources through groups, and have conditional access policies apply. Okay, so I think that kind of gives an overview of what private access is. So before I demo, there's obviously some prerequisites there. There is a license requirement for Entra Private Access. Entra Private Access is a standalone product that you can purchase, but it's typically included in Microsoft Entra Suite licenses. First of all, you need a Microsoft Entra ID tenant. And if you have any Azure resources, you already have an Entra ID tenant. And then you're going to need the role, Global Secure Access Administrator role, Application Administrator, and Conditional Access Administrator role to configure most of the things that I'm going to show you now. I mentioned that because you want to use least privilege. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is actually activate the activate Global Secure Access. Now, this takes 30 seconds. When you activate it, it's activated, and you can't deactivate it unless you remove the license. So I just took a recording of that when I did it on my tenant. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So in the Entra portal, you go to Global Secure Access, and in the dashboard, you'll see this activate button, and you click on that, and you can see by the time of the video, it's only 40 seconds. You just wait for that to activate. Then there's still a few configuration things that we need to do. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, go to my tenant, if we scroll down to Global Secure Access, go to the dashboard. Now you will see that there's actually some information in there. And first off, we need to deploy a connector. So the way that private access allows you to tunnel and create connections to private resources is through a private connector, which is just an agent that needs to sit on the same network with line of sight of those resources. So you may be familiar with Entra ID app proxy or application proxy. It's the same agent, but the app proxy was limited to TCP web traffic, so port 80 and port 443. So I need to deploy a private connector, that agent, in my resources. So I've actually got resources in Azure, and I've got a domain controller virtual machine. And typically when I connect to this machine, I use the Bastion because it's a secure method of connecting to it.
One question in between.
Yeah, please.
If I'm switching to GSA, shall I then need that connector on each laptop?
So there's the client, and I'll get to the client in a moment, but the connector is just the agent that needs, and you only need one agent in your network, although it's recommended to have more than one for redundancy in case something happens. But yeah, you only need that one agent in your entire network, as long as it has network routing to the resources in your data center or your Azure environment.
Okay, it's like a choking point. All the connections for your VPNs will go through and then to Azure.
Yeah. It is, but it does outbound connections only. It's not like you're opening firewall ports to connect into your environment. That agent sits on a machine, then creates outbound HTTPS connections, port 443. Right.
Cool.
Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is there's a connector that you can install from the Azure Marketplace. So if you go to the Azure Marketplace and you can search for Microsoft Entra Private Network Connector, so they've created a deployment, and there's one in AWS and there's one in GCP as well, and it's the same appliance essentially. So when you deploy it, and you'll see in the notes here, let me just zoom in a little bit so you can see, the template, when you're deploying it, needs an authentication token. So what you need to do then is go onto any Windows machine that does not have the connector installed already and run this PowerShell script. So if I go to this other virtual machine that I have, it's our clipboard, and I open PowerShell ISE, and I've actually got this script loaded already, and I'm not going to run it because it takes a few minutes, but essentially what it does is it will download the binaries for the connector, launch them with a specific parameter to just collect the authentication token. Then you need to authenticate to the tenant, the Entra tenant that has Global Secure Access enabled. This is purely for that appliance that you're deploying in Azure or AWS or GCP. You can download the binaries and manually install them and do the authentication by all means on a server, and that might be simpler, but this is actually quite a seamless deployment once you've got this token, and I'll show you that in a moment. Okay, so let's just imagine that I've got this token. It creates a file, and I copy the file, right? Then I go to my Azure subscription, and I'm going to create a resource, and I'm going to search for Microsoft Entra Private Network Connector. So I'm going to click on it, and then I need to choose a subscription, and there is only one plan, and here it gives you the instructions. So if I go create, I can add it to a resource group. It's actually recommended to create a separate resource group because it wants an empty resource group. So if I choose an existing resource group, it will complain that there are resources in there. So it's recommended just to create a new one. Let's just go with GSARG, and I'm just doing this just to go through the motions. And I'm in South Africa, so I'm going to choose South Africa North as my region. Go next. Now, I've got the token from that PowerShell script, and I will paste that in here. So it's a long string of text that I would paste in here. Let's just pretend that's my token. And then I need the Entra tenant ID, which I can get from Entra. So there's my tenant ID. I'm going to go switch back to Azure and paste that in there. And I need to give this virtual machine, because it's a virtual machine, I'm going to give it a name. So GSA connector 1 or something, right? I need to create some credentials, put a credential in there, and you can see the SKU, the t-shirt size of the VM. You can change that if you want to. And I don't go with trusted launch for now, but you can absolutely. And I have an existing virtual network. Now, this is important because I wanted to connect. I wanted to have line of sight to my resources on my virtual network that I have already. So there's no point in creating a separate virtual network unless I'm going to peer those private networks. So I'm going to deploy it straight into the same virtual network and the same subnet as my resources. So I'll choose the subnet that they're on and go next, give it my tags. The deployment takes about 10 minutes, depending on your region and how many resources there are available. It's a virtual machine that installs the application, the agent for you, and it configures it. So it's all done. You don't even have to touch the virtual machine. I already have one, so I'm not going to go ahead. So here's the one that I deployed a few days ago. I'm going to start it. And while that virtual machine starts up, I'm then going to flip over to the Entra portal again and show you the configuration that we need to do in the Entra portal. Now I need to go into Global Secure Access, which is all the way down the bottom. And I need to go to Connect. And first of all, I need to enable the private access traffic forwarding profile. So you'll see here there's traffic forwarding. And these are the 3 tunnels that I spoke about earlier. There's the Microsoft traffic, the private access, and the internet access. For the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to enable the private access profile. That's the private tunneling profile. It's recommended to also enable the Microsoft traffic profile, but it's not required for private access. Then I need to assign this profile to users. So at the moment, there are no users, and I recommend switching it to all users. And there's no risk in doing this because it'll only affect users that actually have the Global Secure Access client. And you asked about the client earlier, and so I'll get into that in a moment still. So this is just saying that any private access profile will apply to all users that have the client installed. And I don't have any users at the moment, so I'm just going to say all users. You could scope it to just a small group of users if you wanted to. Okay. All right, so that's the enabling the traffic profile. Now, I need to make sure that I have a connector and it's active. So here I go down to connectors and sensors. So hopefully that connector that I deployed using the marketplace image is ready for me. It might still be starting up. Private access won't work if that connector is not active. Okay, so let's just give it a moment. The other thing that we can do in the meantime is create a connector group. So it's recommended to create connector groups because you can group them by specific resources or regions and use cases. You can use the same connector for app proxy. So you may already have connector groups in your tenant already if you have been using Entra app proxy. So I'm going to create a new connector group. I'm going to call it GSA private, let's call it North America. All right. And the region, I'm just going to stick with North America, but you can see that there are other regions that you can deploy the connectors into or associate the connectors with. Save that group. There we go. We can see my connectors active now. So now what I can do is I can actually move that connector out of the default group into my GSA private North America group. There we go. The other thing I need to do is actually enable private networks. So you can see that it's disabled. So I still wouldn't be able to use private access yet because I need to enable it. So this is basically enabling the functionality of those connectors. Okay, so I have the connectors. It's in a group. I've enabled the connectors. Now what I want to do is go back to my virtual machine because I need to know what the network is. So this is I'm using Bastion still to connect to this virtual machine. And I am going to, let's run PowerShell. Sorry if it's tiny. Really all I want to do is get the IP address range that this resource is on and also the DNS name. So I'm going to do ipconfig/all. And so you can see that my primary DNS suffix is myignite.biz. And this is the IP address of this server. And so the subnet is obviously 10.0.1.0. So now I'm going to just bear those things in mind and go back to Entra and configure the quick access application. So now this is where we are going to be replacing a VPN. So we go to applications and we go to quick access. Now, quick access is essentially the main VPN replacement application in private access. I've already created the name for it. The connector group is not right. I'm just going to select the connector group that has that connector installed on it. And what I'm going to do is add an application segment. And so the application segment that I need is the network, essentially. And so I'm going to use the entire network, which is not really what we want to do in the end. But the reason I'm doing this is so that I can demonstrate I have access to the network as a replacement to the VPN. So my address range is 10, my address space is /16. So it's a lot of addresses, right? And I need the ports. So I'm going to add a whole lot of ports in there as well. So port 1 to 52 and then 54 to 65,535. And I'm going to enable both TCP and UDP protocols. So now I've added pretty much the entire network. So not moving away from a VPN, but it's the same. The other thing I want to do, I'm just going to save that, is add the private DNS to it. There we go. So what private DNS does is allow my client to be able to do DNS resolution of whatever's in the on-premise data center or Azure or whatever that remote resource is. You don't have to do that, but then you need to provide some kind of DNS resolution to the client if you need to do name resolution. Otherwise, you can just use IP address connections. So going to add that my ignite.biz.
So this is basically your internal DNS on your on-premise
Correct.
site, right? Okay, got it.
That's right. So let me save that. Okay, and just to demonstrate, let's see. Where did my command window go? Oh, it's coming up on the other side. So if I ns lookup now, the problem is this is also, so it's a split DNS. So this is also a public DNS zone. Yeah, and I'm not really getting, but I have resources on there. So let's say files. So I'm going to look up files dot. Now I know files.myignite.biz is not on my public DNS. The other thing, going back to the quick access, is I need to assign users. So nobody can connect to this VPN replacement until I assign users. And so this is where the identity-centric piece comes in from zero trust networking, is I can now assign groups of users or individual users, or the entire organization if I wanted to. But typically your VPNs, you don't assign to every single user, maybe just some of the users that need to do remote work. I have a group already. I need to add.
Is this the profile creation, what you mentioned before? What you're doing in the quick access?
Yes. So this is within the profile. So within private access, there's the profile, and then there's all the rules within the profile or the applications. This is one application within the profile. Okay, so I have a group called GSA internal quick access users, a couple of users in there, but I'm assigning that group. So now one group of users can use this VPN replacement.
Mm-hmm.
And I can put conditional access in front of it. Okay, so let's just check that everything's happy. We have the IP address range, the entire network, the DNS is all there, but what else do we need to do? So I guess my client needs to be able to connect. So, and by the way, when you create this application, it actually creates an enterprise application in Entra, enterprise app. And like any integrated application, you can manage it. So it's created this GSA quick access application. It's a service principal in the tenant. Right, I've added the users, and now, here we go. So this is the client. I've installed the client on my machine, but it's disabled. All right. So now the client is a simple installation, and you can deploy it with any deployment tools. If you have Mac, you can deploy it with Intune or just run a standard installation. And so I am now going to enable the client. And now I need to sign in. So I am already signed into Windows on this machine. And it may prompt me to sign in. Actually, it didn't. It's single sign-on because it's taken the token from the device, because the device is joined to Entra. I'm now connected. And you can see I've got private channel and Entra channel for just basically the access, the being able to authenticate. There is a troubleshooting piece to it. And what I like to do when I first do this is go to troubleshooting and get policy to make sure that I'm getting the latest policy. And the other thing I like to do is to run the advanced diagnostics tool. And that then needs administrative privileges on the machine. And when you run the tool, and I'm hoping you can see this tool, there's a health check, which will go through a number of things to check that everything's cool on the client. And then I can see the forwarding profiles. So you can see private access forwarding profile is there, and it's listing my network segment and all the ports and all the protocols. And further down, I've got private DNS rules, and I can see my DNS suffix. So this is now on the client, which is not in any way connected to that Azure network or my on-premises network. It's just a Windows machine that's Entra joined. Okay, so now we can actually test that I have access to those resources. So the first thing I like to test is, because it's a VPN replacement, is remote desktop. So before I do that, I just want to show you where are my virtual machines. So this virtual machine is running, and it only has a private IP address. It doesn't have a public IP address associated with it. So it's only accessible on the same network, 10.0.1.5. So I, in theory, should be able to, from my client, which is sitting here in South Africa, connect to 10.0.1.5. It's asking me for credentials, and there we go.
So you're connecting from your local client with the VPN connection of Entra straight away into your Azure virtual machine.
Correct. That's right.
Cool.
Yeah. It popped up on this screen. So yeah, there's my virtual machine. I hope you can see this. Yeah, so that just demonstrates RDP or remote desktop. But let's test the DNS bit, because the other thing I might want to do as a remote worker is access some file shares, an SMB file share that's on my corporate network, so on-prem or in another data center. So I'm going to go over here, and you can see this //files.myignite.biz and a share. And you saw earlier that it didn't resolve the host name. So that was before I enabled the client. Now I'm hitting enter, and it most likely will pop up on the other screen. So I'm going to slide it over as soon as it pops up. Here we go. So it's done the DNS resolution, and it's done an SMB port 445 connection to the Azure files, not Azure files, sorry, the file share on a on-prem private resource. And so I can browse the file share, do what I need to do, open files, save them.
So basically, if I have network mappings locally on my device, and I reconnect after the VPN is there, it will pop up, right?
Yeah.
And that VPN, is that always being connected? Do I have to enable it? Will it be enabled at the start of my laptop working day?
Yeah, so by default, the client, once it's installed, it's enabled. And there are registry keys that you can use to harden the client so that users can't disable it. When you're testing it, it's always useful to have the ability to enable and disable. But there are registry keys that you can deploy with it to make sure that it stays enabled and is never disconnected. But you might want that flexibility. So that's why Microsoft give you that option to enter those registry keys.
And will it also affect when for instance, if I am on my work, it will be disabled. When I'm getting into the train because I'm going to travel, it will enable. Can I also configure that? The sort of protection?
So I just want to make sure I understand that. If you are connected to your corporate network through the client, and you change to a different network and it's a public Wi-Fi, is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes.
Exactly that. So the client is network aware and it will do continuous access evaluation. That's the CAE. So, so just a little bit about continuous access evaluation. It depends on the client. So if you didn't have global secure access and you used, say, Outlook to connect to Exchange Online, right? If there is a change in your network and you've got conditional access policies that say you can't connect from a public Wi-Fi at the train station, Outlook picks that up because it is CAE aware and it will disconnect, all right? But not all applications support continuous access evaluation. SMB file shares, for example, right? They don't have the ability to do that CAE check to see that you've changed networks. But the global secure access tunnel, the client, is CAE aware, so it will cut that tunnel as soon as it detects a change.
Right.
And
Okay.
the same goes for if you if you reset the user's password or you revoke the user's tokens or whatever the case may be, it will continuous access evaluation will kick in and make that change.
All right. Awesome.
So that's the demo of it deployed, working, and as a VPN replacement. What I do want to just show you very quickly here, because it's quite useful, is back in the Entra portal is the application discovery. Now, we've defined the quick access application, but we should actually be creating segments, app segments, carving out, only the administrators should be able to RDP to the servers, and they need to do a whole lot of MFA, and it must be phishing resistant or whatever. So we can see from the application discovery that, this one user has done 16 transactions to a server using RDP. So let's create a separate segment for that. So we can say add to new application, and we can go through the motions of creating a dedicated application just for that RDP server, and it'll carry across the configuration, the app segment. It knows it's 3389 because of what's being used. So we could say, privileged server admins RDP or something, right? And then we could have a separate connector deployed for that in a connector group that can see those servers. So you can do zero trust segmentation to the connector level as well as the app level. And then assign specific users. So only these administrators can RDP. And if you're not one of those users, you don't even get the functionality. So now you're carving out a lot of granularity within your VPN. So it's not the access to the entire network and you can go anywhere anymore. It's you can only go where you can go. You might have a finance application that sits on a web portal internally, but you only want the finance department to access it. Same thing, you can create that.
Cool.
So that's global secure access, private access.
Awesome. Yeah, that's for people that just are new to this topic. Do you have any advice there? How to get started?
Yeah, so have a look at what the licenses are. There are free trials, so you can enable a free trial on your tenant if you don't have Entra Suite licenses already. And I'd say get started, configure it, try out the replacement of a VPN. And there's lots of guidance on learn.microsoft.com on how to do that. Basically, what I've just done is well documented.
All right, cool, awesome. Matthew, I want to thank you for your time, also for the great demonstration. It's a very promising tool and definitely worthwhile to dive into that. I would say for everybody at home, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you have any comments, please leave them below. And otherwise, till next time, take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.